Day 5, Into the Woods, pages 117 to 129. Whatever happened the night before, Aunt Pretty was chipper the next morning as we made our way down to church. I half expected to see a faceless fellow wearing long johns or a table all laid out for dinner as we passed through the graveyard, but all I saw were butterflies flitting around the tombstones, especially the one with the purple and pink flowers all around it. I squinted my eyes. Mary Haynes Fitzgerald, the marker read. I should have known it. Some of the flowers were violets. During the service, when Calvin played Amazing Grace, I could hear the cloud of bugs buzzing toward Sassifras Springs. In Sunday school, I tried hard not to see Miss Zeldy in my mind. I decided to try picturing myself in Colorado, so when Miss Pritchard asked me how big a mustard seed was, she caught me off guard. High as a mountain, I answered. She was surprised, but she said that was the general idea, and it grew big because of faith. Later, folks congregated outside to chat. Since they didn't work in their fields and gardens on the Sabbath, our neighbors weren't in a big hurry to go home. Neither was Aunt Pretty. I was itching to get our big Sunday dinner over with so I could round up a couple more wonders. After all, there'd be no more chores until evening. With the whole day before me, I might be able to finish my entire list. My aunt was too busy chit-chatting with other ladies to think about dinner. Pa was in the middle of a long conversation with Marvin Peavy, the mayor of Sassafras Springs. Suddenly, Reverend Carson grabbed a hold of me. Folks like to call him Parson Carson, but only behind his back. What's this I hear about you looking for wonders? He asked in his booming preacher's voice. It's kind of a game, I explained. Stick to the good book, Eben. You'll find all the signs and wonders you ever need there. Yes, sir, I answered. That's good advice. I didn't have the nerve to suggest he preach on the theme of love thy neighbor, but some members of his congregation, like Orville Payne, could stand to hear it. Somebody else grabbed Parson Carson's attention, and I went looking for Jeb. I found him under the big maple tree, trying to keep his brothers and sisters from getting dirty. It was not an easy job. I stopped by yesterday, but nobody was home, I told him. I had to go see my cousins, he said. I figured. Got a plan for Sunday after dinner, said Jeb. We'll go dig worms and sell them for bait on Monday so as we can buy ourselves a root beer at the right time. I want root beer, Flo whined. Sounds tempting, but I've got something else to do, I told him. I know, the wonders. Jeb sounded disappointed. Maybe we can find one down at the creek. Maybe, I said, but I still didn't believe it. Still looking for wonders could be a little lonely, even with Sal along. If we can get dinner over, I can look around some and still make it to the creek. I glanced over at Aunt Pretty, and she showed no sign of moving on. I decided to see if I could hurry her up. She was talking to Leslie Mull when I approached. I've got a hankering for your good fried chicken, I told my aunt. Flattery never hurts with her as long as it's based on truth. Mrs. Mull poked her pointy face out from under the brim of her yellow sunbonnet. Eben, I hear tell you've been paying visits around Sassafras Springs. Just asking folks if they have something special to show me. Miss Payne says Orville caught you snooping around. Of course, I'm sure you meant no harm. Aunt Pretty snorted. Poor Almeda. Orville has plenty to hide, if you get my meaning. She brought a cupped hand to her mouth in a gesture that meant one thing, drinking. The habit was frowned on by both the Baptist and the community churches, except for medicinal purposes. And nothing to hide, said Leslie. Eben, if you want to see something special, come over and I'll show you my log cabin quilt. I was just a young woman when I won second place at the county fair with that quilt. Yes, ma'am, I answered, even though everybody had a log cabin quilt somewhere. Aunt Pretty had 2 or 3. Well, Leslie, this boy looks hungry, Aunt Pretty said. I guess I'll have to feed him. As we left the churchyard, Leslie called after me. You come on over and see it, boy. After Aunt Pretty's big Sunday spread, Sal and I trudged back up the Yellow Dog Road. Though my full stomach slowed me down a bit, I was feeling hopeful until I heard footsteps running down the hill behind me. Without a doubt, Ray Ellen Hubble knew how to ruin a perfectly good afternoon. Are you ready for my wonderful now? No, I am not. I took a firm tone with Ray Ellen. Well, Junior Watkins's wonderful didn't pan out, did it? Sassafras Springs didn't have a newspaper, and we didn't need one either with Ray Ellen poking her nose into everybody's business. I may have to call the county sheriff and tell him you're making a nuisance of yourself, I told her. Ha ha ha. Ray Ellen didn't sound the least bit scared. You don't have an idea of where to look, and I have a wonderful for you, so you might as well see it. I'm looking for wonders, and I'm looking alone. I set off down the road at a fast clip. I knew she was behind me, but I didn't look back, not all the way down to town. On Sunday, what few businesses we had in Sassifras Springs were closed. Hiram used to keep the gas pumps open, but there wasn't enough traffic to make it worth his while. Sal and I crossed the county road and headed for the creek. Jeb was already there fishing. I thought you were looking for wonders, he said. I thought you were going to dig worms. Jeb grinned. Already did. Got a full bucket, so I headed to do some fishing. I squatted down next to him. Better not let Parson Carson see you. That fish must know it's Sunday, said Jeb. I haven't had a nibble. At least I don't have to look after the young'uns. Jeb's parents always gave Maggie and him Sunday afternoon off. Gee whiz, it's boiling hot. I lay back flat on the rock with my feet dangling in the cool creek water. I'm trying to ditch Ray Ellen, I explained, taking a quick look behind me. She was nowhere to be seen. But Maggie and another girl from school, Carrie, were wading through the water toward us. Maggie was scrawny as a stick, but us boys admired her because she was the only girl ever to win the watermelon seed spitting contest at the Sunday school picnic. Carrie was a teacher's pet, but she deserved to be since she never did a bad thing in her life. Coogie Jackson's got a wonder for you, said Maggie, waving her arms towards the woods. He wants you to come, now. Coogie, short for Jacob Coogan Jackson, had a wonder. Now that got my attention. Coogie was no ordinary boy. At 6, he ate a fly on a nickel bet and declared it tasted fine. At 8, he kissed a toad in exchange for a dish of ice cream. He said it tasted like chocolate, the toad and the ice cream both. At 9, Coogie ate a June bug on a dare. He rubbed his belly and said June bugs had more flavor and crunch than flies. He liked them both fine. Last year, Coogie Jackson ate some leaves for 2 bits and got poison ivy all through his throat and innards. They thought he'd die, but he managed to pull through. Barely. He ended up a bit thinner, a little paler, and a lot hoarser than before. Some of us would try to rile him about it. Got a tickle in your throat, Coogie, we'd ask, or eat any good leaves lately? Coogie never got upset, but he didn't eat anything for money after that, either. Still, he had our respect. He knew things the rest of us would never know. That gave him power. I sat up straight. Is it true, Carrie? I asked, knowing she wouldn't ruin her reputation by lying. Carrie nodded. He told me himself. Come on, I'll show you. It was hard to pass up a summons from Coogie, and it was hard to pass up a wonder, except if it was from Ray Ellen. Jeb and I got up to follow the girls. Sal was already way ahead of the rest of us. There was nothing like a bridge over Liberty Creek, but there were spots where you could walk across a trail of fallen trees and big rocks to get over to the other side. We followed the girls deep into the woods to a place I'd never been. Jeb and I tried to explore those woods a few times, but if the chiggers didn't discourage us, the poison ivy did. I wasn't happy about going over there, but like I said, Coogie had power. We stopped in a small clearing in front of an old abandoned outhouse, weathered to the color of ashes, looking like a gust of wind would knock it flat. There were inch-wide gaps in the splintering wood and a tangle of weeds wrapped around it. There was nothing unusual about an outhouse in Sassafras Springs. Most folks still thought a bathroom inside the house was unnecessary, expensive, maybe even unsanitary, though Aunt Pretty sighed a lot when she read about big city houses with indoor plumbing and the wringer washers and ice boxes. This outhouse hadn't been used in a long, long time. What it was doing out in the middle of nowhere was a puzzle. There was no house or even a shack in those woods, and you sure as shooting don't need an outhouse if you don't have folks living nearby. Deep in the woods, you don't need a bathroom at all. Are you funning me? I asked, trying to make my voice low and even like Pa's. Coogie stepped out from the back of the outhouse. He had hair the color of cotton. If he wasn't a boy, you'd have thought he was a white-haired old man. Instead, he was a white-haired young man with pale skin and light blue eyes and almost white lashes. Albert Bowie stepped out from behind him like he was Coogie's shadow. What took you so long? Coogie asked in his husky voice. I hope you're not telling me this old outhouse is a wonder, I told him. Looks more like a calamity. Do you want to wonder or not? I might decide to go home if you're not interested. You'd better listen, said Albert. He's got a humdinger for you. I bit my tongue to keep from saying, who doesn't? I want to hear it, said Maggie, almost breathless. Me too, said Carrie. Nobody on earth, except maybe Pa, could have kept me from hearing that story, but I didn't want Coogie to know it. Only have a few minutes, I warned him. Good enough, said Coogie. He pointed to a fallen tree nearby. Have a seat, and I'll tell you why this outhouse is a wonder of the world. Maggie, Carrie, and Jeb plopped down as they were told, but not me. I stood face to face with Coogie. How would you know? I asked. As much as I wanted a wonder, I was suspicious. My pa told me. Maybe you don't know it, but he didn't come from around here. He came all the way from Gladiola, Georgia. So what? I asked. After all, my pa's people came to Sassafras Springs by way of Virginia. Every family started somewhere, except maybe the Indians. Well, it's not where he come from that's important, said Coogie. It's how he come here. Do you want this dang wonder or not? It sounded like a challenge. I'm listening, I told him, but I still didn't sit down.